I gotta tell you guys, you gotta love and hate technology. I just spent 10 minutes starting this update recording, and then Loom just cut out on me, and there's no recording there. So I'm gonna have to go back and redo all of this first 10 minutes. No big deal though. Okay, so I'd like to give you an update, a COVID update. Thank you for leaving your questions. And also give you a little update on Rosh Review. You know, what I want to start out by saying is that I've been doing updates for the public and also for the local news here. And if you know, these are they're really great in that the public ones are about an hour long, and I've been posting them in Rosh Review YouTube. So if you want some in-depth, good, detailed information, feel free to go to Rosh Review YouTube and go to the COVID channel, and all of the posts are being put there. They are really nice because we've been doing them every week, and so we're hitting on the most important areas that are coming out in a week. So let's kind of dive into this, and I don't even know what I was talking about on the previous recording, so let's just get to it here. So as far as COVID goes, let's start with a couple really important points here. Point number one is that COVID is endemic in our society, and what that means is we're going to be living with this for 1-2 years. There's no way around that. What the end means is that the end is when we reach 70% herd immunity. Herd immunity is when you have enough people infected that the virus is going to have a really hard time spreading. So think about this. If you have 10 people in a room, 7 have antibodies to the virus, 2 of them have no antibodies, and 1 person's infected, right? If you're one of those 2 people, right, the possibility of getting infected is going to be real low. But more importantly, it's the idea of what happens to the infectivity rate overall. And you've heard of R0, or the average infection rate of a single person. It was around 2 to 3 for COVID. And once you get to 70% herd immunity, that R0 drops below 1. And once you are dropped below 1, you no longer have a pandemic. So how do we get to 70% herd immunity? It's going to be a combination of being infected or getting a vaccine, or a combination of both. Now, I could tell you personally, I'm not counting on a vaccine to get us through this. The fact that you need an effective vaccine, we don't even have one for influenza. They're similar viruses, and the logistics of administering a vaccine would be unbelievably complicated. You have 7 billion people who all want the vaccine. You can only imagine what that will look like. So we will get through this through herd immunity. And that's really important to understand, because on the other hand, we need to get out and start living. We need to get out and start producing, manufacturing, educating, learning. We need to go back and get some semblance of our life back, but they're not mutually exclusive. It has to happen together. Now, the problem here in the United States is that we have an absolute failure of our national and federal government in providing guidance, instruction, and infrastructure to lead the way here and get us back out. We don't, living here, we don't have an alternative that we see readily. We don't think about the alternatives, and I'll get in that to a minute. But we have comparison countries. We have countries like Germany, some Scandinavian countries, Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, who have all been doing the right things. And yes, they've suffered some consequences. People have died, infection rates, but it's so much lower than what we're experiencing here, or it's lower than what we're experiencing here, and that's on a per capita basis. So what those countries are doing is they have a federal infrastructure recommendation. Their businesses are abiding by certain principles and behaviors, and they have ways to identify local outbreaks, all these things that we should be doing here that we're not. And what's happening is now you have confusion, you have anxiety, you have people saying that this thing's not real, you have chaos, right? And it's really unfortunate that that's where we're at, but this is a pure 100% leadership issue as far as getting to this point right here. So the real important thing is, what does that mean for us, for you? personally. On one hand, if you are, if your family owns a business, let's say, I know there's someone who sorry, one second here. I just want to make sure of something. Okay, who has a coffee shop, right? The sooner you could implement these practices, the better off you're going to be. And what that means is, right, everyone should be wearing masks. Your employees should be wearing masks. You should have spatial protective areas for people who are behind the counter. Everyone in the store needs to be spaced 6 feet apart. You need to spread the tables out. You need to monitor the inflow and outflow, right? These are some basic things that they're not hard to do. They're not that costly, but the reality is they're what we need to do as a society for businesses to be able to get through this, to be able to live with the virus, right? That's what we need to accept. We're living with this virus. All right, and the sooner we do that, the better off we'll be. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what we have to deal with. We have been let down by our health authorities at the national level here, and so we have to do it ourselves. I don't even know what's going to come down the line from all of this. So think about, personally, right? If you're a relatively healthy person, middle-aged, young person, even though some young people, and I don't take this lightly here, some young people are being affected significantly by the virus. Some are dying, some have complications. For the most part, the younger, middle-aged, healthy people are doing just fine here. So if you take the proper precautions, right, you try and get yourself a mask. If you need a mask, I ordered from stadiummasks.com. I ordered a batch. If it's something that you want to go do, you could use the code SAVE5, SAVE5. I called them up. I asked them for a discount, and they gave me that code SAVE5. If you can't, you have to buy a big box of them. I'd be happy to send some out if you guys can't get them on your own, but feel free to do that. Reach out to me personally, and I'm happy to send some out to you. If you go out, physically distance, use your mask, good hygiene, you could go out and do things. And I could answer specific questions on behaviors, and there's a few here that I'll answer. But here's one of the main takeaways: is that if we're at 5 or 10% infectivity in our country right now, and we're going to reach 70% herd immunity when this thing is over, our 70,000 deaths are going to be nothing compared to where we're going to be at. We're going to be in the hundreds of thousands, and that is so impactful on us as a society. And our country right now, we have 25% or so of the world's deaths, and we're 4% of the population. It's truly a travesty what's happening here in the United States, and it's only going to get worse. On one hand, I'm very pessimistic about what's happening here. But on another hand, there are enough people who want to do the right thing and who want to understand what to do. People like everyone here. So that gives me optimism and hope here. But just know, ask any questions you have. There are some common sense behaviors that we all need to be doing. And if we do those things, we could live with the virus, okay? Now, if you're a high-risk person or you're in an older age population, there's going to be more precautions that you're going to have to take. And that's real, and your life is going to be harder than everyone else's, and that you're going to have to stay at home. So, parents, for example, if you're 70, 80 years old, those mortality rates are right now very high. And so I just don't think that it's they definitely nothing in crowds, but let's say you put a mask on and you follow good hygiene and physical distancing, sure, you just have to understand what the risks are here, especially in the older population. It's important though for young people to be able to get out, and because if you have been infected, or if the likelihood of you having serious consequences from the infection is low, then the more people we could get out in the community, the slower the spread of infection, and the safer it is for everyone else. So those are the two big takeaways from the COVID update right now that are just kind of like front and center, that you need to grasp those now to I think, start, to then manage what your future looks like, because it's like chess in a way, in that, right? Like, you're going to make a move, the virus is going to make a move. You're going to make a move, the virus is going to make a move. And actually, I don't know what I said in the first video and what I've already said here, but the pathway is one of, it's really part of three different scenarios here. And this came out of CIDRAP, the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy out of Minnesota, Michael Osterholm. And we could see a scenario that we, just had a big peak that we had, and then we're going to get another huge peak at some point, whether it's the fall, the winter, who knows when. And then that will take us to about 70%, or, shortly after we'll hit our 70%. Or we'll have a situation where we have what we just went through, and we're going to have 4 or 5 more of these, or 3 of these, where we're going to have to kind of shelter in place because infection rates are super high again. That's one scenario to get us to our 70%. Or we're going to have like the slow burn scenario, where it's going to be just like a few thousand every single day, and we're going to do that for 2-3 years until we reach our 70%. So one of those scenarios will be the case. And I'll just say this: there is no question that this virus will, it may disappear for a few months. It may go away in the summer for whatever reason, and don't think warm weather is the reason. These seasonalities just happen. We don't really know why. It's probably human behavior, but it will come back. Okay, anything environmental, we're like 100% certain that that's going to happen. It's just like the laws of gravity. There's laws of respiratory infectious disease, and this virus is going to follow those laws, and that's kind of what we have to deal with here. So let me just look at these questions real quick. Okay, so the deal with antibody testing, right? Just as a reminder, there's 2 types of testing. There's diagnostic and there's serology. Diagnostic testing answers the question, do I have COVID-19 right now? Yes or no? And for that, you should only really do that if you have symptoms at this point. Number 2, serology testing, have I had COVID-19, yes or no? And there's quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative is just saying, have you had it, yes or no? Quantitative is saying, have you had it, yes or no? And am I immune or not? It answers those questions. And so the am I immune or not thing is a interesting question. It's not a new question, right? You could go to your doctor's office right now and if you're going to go travel, or you're starting a residency position, like you have to, or any type of position where you're going to be around patients, you get serological testing to find out what your immune response is to various infectious diseases, mumps, measles, rubella, hepatitis, right? You see the increase in your antibody from baseline. We do that all the time. That's not new. And so this is the same thing for COVID. And so don't worry about the debate. There were some unfortunate headlines, interpretation of headlines about you not being protected if you're infected by COVID. Sure, those cases may happen, but that's the exception to the rule. For the most part, you should be protected if you've been infected. Now, you have to measure your antibodies to get proof of that, but for the most part, that should be the case. How long you're protected for, that's unknown right now, and that varies, right? Even different vaccines will have different lengths of protection. For example, pertussis, we know, wanes into the adolescence, right? Whereas some other things could last a lot longer. Now, the other part of serology is what happened is there was a failure at the CDC and FDA with testing, and the next thing you know, they opened up the floodgates, and you had dozens and dozens of companies coming online with tests that were poor. So you have low specificity and sensitivity tests that are out there on the market, and so you could get a positive, and then next thing you know, it's a false positive with 20% false positivity rate. That's very dangerous as well. So, you have to find out. For example, my mom called me today. She goes, I could get serological testing. And I said, okay, let's find out what test they're using. The doctor's office didn't even know what test that they're using because they send it off to the lab. So we called the lab and found out that they're using this Abbott test, which is a pretty good test. It's like 98% to 100% sensitive and specific, which is good. You want something like that, 98, high specificity. You want that to be as close to 100%. All right, so that's serological testing. I urge everyone to get serological testing from a reliable source when you can. I would not get the rapid serological testing, the qualitative tests. I just, the point of care tests, I just don't think that those are going to be accurate enough to do. So in the local area, that's what we have here. I just haven't gone to go do it. I'm not doing it until someone has some quantitative testing that will actually show my antibody levels. So to answer Rob's question about vitamin D, the thing is, we don't know enough, right? There's no real studies to show. All of this is going to be correlational, whether vitamin D may do this or that. And so my advice is always just to be in the best possible health you can, cardiovascularly, right? Maintain a good, healthy diet, get outside, walk, be mentally healthy. And that's the best that's the best defense against this virus. That's really it. There's nothing complex about it. Don't worry about any levels in your body. You do the best you can. Vitamin D is good for us. We know that. So yeah, more of it is probably going to be a little better. Get some UV light, get some sun. UV light won't kill the virus in your body though. Just remember that. And don't drink bleach. Okay, so now there's a couple questions about domestic travel. And here's kind of my take on this, right? If you're young, if you're healthy, and and you're following good practice, good behaviors, then, and you have a mask, I think it's very important. I would not get on an airplane without a mask right now. And I'm talking N95 or KN95 mask. That's what I'm talking about here. And that's what Stadium Masks has. They have KN95. I would not travel without one. I would not go to a public place without one, the grocery store, anything like that. It's a personal choice. What you're dealing with is what's your risk tolerance. And, if you need to get on a plane, I think get on a plane, right? Knowing what your risk tolerance is. And hopefully that plane will have implemented the proper safety precautions so that you're not sitting next to someone. And I would call the airline and ask them, am I going to be sitting someone? Who is going to be the closest person to me that you're going to allow? Are they going to be right behind me? Because if that's the case, I don't know if they don't have a mask that I would fly. So the people around you should have masks as well, and that's really important. Otherwise, I would drive, okay? If you want to drive, get in the car. You could stay at hotels. I think that's reasonable. I wouldn't worry about having a sanitized hotel room. Like, this thing is a respiratory virus. It lives in the air. Open up the windows for a couple hours. Let the air kind of circulate in your room, and you should be fine. It's very low. I know everyone talks about like good, keeping areas sterile and clean, and that's good to do. It's good practice. But this thing spreads through respiratory droplets and aerosolization. That's the main way. 90% of it's going to happen that way. So I think staying in a hotel is fine. I would love to see that hotel. Everyone should be wearing masks and they should be cleaning it, right? Like, call ahead for that hotel. But I think that's totally reasonable to do. I would not worry about like having a quarantine for 2 weeks after you travel and things like that. I think if you're asymptomatic, not a big deal. No need to do that unless you want to see older or at-risk people. If that's the case, then I would probably quarantine for 2 weeks. Like, if I'm going to go see my parents and I don't want to have to wear a mask all the time and this and that, I would probably quarantine for 2 weeks for sure. Not probably, I would. Wearing a mask and being around parents for a little while is probably fine, but like staying in their house is probably a little too much because, again, the aerosolization, the likelihood of them kind of running into or being close enough to any particle that might be in the air is actually real. So I wouldn't do that. So hopefully that answered those questions. Melinda, about steroid, don't change anything that you're doing. There was a lot of question about, being on certain medications and being at risk or for COVID, and all of that stuff has been been shown to be not accurate, in the sense that you could take ACE inhibitors, you could take steroids. It's just that if you do have symptoms of COVID, I would stop those things. Or if you have proven COVID, I would stop them at that time. Don't change your life otherwise. Those other health issues will be a greater burden on you than the likelihood of COVID, especially someone who's relatively young and healthy. So hopefully I answered your question, Sarah. Also, Sherry, any predictors about school and camp and things like that? That's all going to be local decisions, It's just, right, we have to go on. We have to move on. And so people are going to have to deal with those risks, and the community is going to have to make those decisions. Obviously, the best way to do this is to have the discussions, but also implement the safest behaviors and protocols. And that's the best you could do. If you're going to go have school, have ways to identify that if someone does test positive, that there's contact tracing, and you could alert families that is happening, right? There's a way to live with this, and that's what we all have to be doing. And the questions we need to be answering. How do you live with COVID-19? All right? There's no answer that I could give you to say yes to school or no to school, yes to camp or no to camp. That's not the right question. The right question is, how do we modify camp? How do we make people aware of what the possibilities are? And how do we implement systems so that we can respond to what's going to happen and have contingencies and redundancies in place? That's the type of thinking that we need to be having right now, and those discussions that we need to be having for sure. So as far as all this crazy propaganda and conspiracy stuff, these videos that are going around, it's so disheartening. In fact, it's made me so depressed in so many ways, just personally. You have people who spend decades and decades of their life studying things and working on science for the better of society and for the good of society. You have hundreds of years of precedent. You have rigorous research. And then someone makes a video with someone who has a vendetta, and all of a sudden that claim becomes relevant, that people actually put time and listen and watch it, is the most disappointing thing. And what I really think at a higher level, it's a reflection of where our society is right now, which is pretty scary for me, and it's something that is a real concern for me. And whatever your political background is, I'm not shy to share this with you, because I think it's very dangerous. So whatever you think, that's fine. I'm gonna, I'll still be apolitical. I'm just saying the idea of these conspiracy theories, and what I mean by that is unsubstantiated claims, and these, having an answer for every denial and question of someone who tries to say that this is a conspiracy theory. There's always a response to people when they say, the defenders of conspiracy theories. They always come up with something. Some guy the other day I'm talking to, I tell him, hey, that video you sent me, it's down from YouTube. And you know what his response was? His response was, oh, YouTube is owned by Google, and Google is an owner in vaccines, and therefore they have a stake in this. And I was like, man, once you start hearing stuff like that, it's like, can't you think critically about this? Is it true that everyone is in on this against you? Like the whole world is in on this? And so going up against conspiracy theories is really, really challenging. And I thought about this last night, right? It's delusional. And I've cared for delusional patients in the emergency department. The definition of delusion is a fixed false belief. And what that means is you cannot convince people that what they believe is not true. And that's what a lot of people who believe in conspiracies, right? They use the data to fit their conclusions, and there's no other way around that. And so I'm very worried about society right now, because this is a cultural movement and trend that we've been seeing now for a long time. And what's even scarier, whatever your political affiliations are, the reality is that this is a top-down endorsed type of behavior and culture. This is top-down. And so it's really dangerous. So, how you personally deal with that, it's really it's challenging. I have decided that I delete any text that comes to me, anyone on Facebook that sends this to me, I just delete it, because otherwise I get anxious, and my time that goes into it, I don't want to spend any more time on that. 1 second, I just got to, I have a meeting here. I have to just give 5 minutes. Okay, so you could probably sense a distraughtness about these conspiracies, and I am, because I think it's insulting. I think it's insulting that people, it's one thing to question science, and the whole purpose of science, right, is to try and disprove things. But you use the scientific method to disprove things. You use data, you use years of research, right? You don't use some interview with a researcher who was arrested, and it's been some, false and some conspiracy theory around that. Like, that's not how you disprove a belief. And this is not new in society. This is not new. We've been dealing with this for hundreds of years, and it's insulting when I have to talk to a neighbor who is a reasonable, educated person, and they believe this, and that gets me down. So what does that mean? That means that we need to do better. We need to stay committed. We need to just do our best work. And that's what I've kind of resigned to, is just to say, those people are going to be those people. They're delusional. They really are delusional. So we need to stay committed. We need to stick with our best work, and we need to continue to create and do good science, do things in a way that doesn't deviate from our high standards, and that's so critical for us to do. So, and I'm gonna keep doing that. All right. Now, as far as Rosh review goes, all right, this is the good stuff. So, I've touched on this. I've touched on this in a few of these updates. We are a committed group of people. I'm committed to making sure that we stick together through COVID-19 and through some of the craziness that we're seeing here. We get through this together. If we're on a boat together, we need everyone rowing. We need everyone focused, everyone moving together, and that's how we're going to do this. If I have the ability to make these decisions, this is the decision that I want to make here. Every single person here is valuable and needs to contribute, and that's what we're doing. We need to be thinking about the future. We have to stop thinking about the past. We need to start thinking about how we grow, how we move forward, how we provide. Again, I've said this over and over, how we continue to solve problems for people. That's how we succeed. How we provide value for people. That's how we succeed. All right? And people are counting on us. People may not know what they need right now, and we need to figure that out and give that to them. So overall, Rosh Review is we're still in a solid position. Okay, that doesn't mean that there's headwinds. We have lots of headwinds, right? There's programs with budgetary constraints. There's competitors coming into our markets. All right. This is the nature of business. This is living in the jungle, so to speak, right? Like, one day you're walking and it's just, you hear the birds chirping, and another day there's a predator around the corner. But as a group, we stick together, we get past that predator. But the way we have to do that is by sticking together, all right? And I'm relying on every single person to be able to do this. Everybody has talent. Everybody has something to contribute. And some of us may have some of it more now than in the past, more in the future than now. But it truly takes, you truly look inward and know that there's something in you that you have that other people don't, that you could contribute. And it may not be something we even know of right now. But just know that it's welcomed, it's supported, and it's something that it's safe to be able to do, because as we move forward, we need everyone to be looking. We need everyone to be looking ahead, everyone to be looking forward, everyone to be looking to growth and success. And I think that kind of sums it up there. I know that's a little repetitive. Okay, so hopefully I answered a lot of your questions. Good, solid half hour here. And, maybe you could sense some passion. There's certainly some, I don't know if it's a little anger or what it is about kind of some of this environment, but we need to use that anger to propel us, to energize us, right? That's what you have to do with anger. You can't let anger linger. You can't let anger pull you down. You can't let it cause despair. And while hope is not a strategy, right? We want to, I hope things continue to get better. And I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to make sure I'm doing it myself, or at least contributing to making things better. And knowing who you are, knowing your backgrounds, I think you're going to be doing the same things here. And when you bring all of that together, the energy that comes out of that, again, right? The sum is greater than the parts. And that's what we have here at Rosh Review. We need to continue to do that, continue to rely on one another, support one another, and move forward together. We do that together. So thank you for your time. If there's any other specific questions, I love the medical COVID questions. That's, I don't know if you guys know this, but I did grad school in virology and public health. So this is like the perfect topic between emergency medicine, virology, and public health. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Be well and stay well.